Chi, what about you?
Hi, I'm Chijoke Williams. You can call me Chi, and I'm currently writing Between Heartbeats. I'm also on a few other shows, Star Tripper, Jar of Rebuke, but it might also take a little bit to list. Good to meet you all.
And what are your pronouns, Chi?
Thank you so much. My pronouns are she, her.
Excellent. Jade, you're up next in my column.
She, her. I work on Retribution and a production company, DC Productions, that's working on future shows.
All right, and last but not least, Roshan.
Hiya, I'm Roshan. My pronouns are he, him. I was the writer, director, composer for Temujin and audio drama, and our company is called Andas Productions.
Fantastic. All right, so I have a bunch of questions to ask y'all, and I invite you to just jump in if you're really excited to answer. I don't want to spend this whole time calling names like a classroom. So my first question is, how did all of you get started in audio drama? Because I know you all came from different backgrounds, and I would love to hear about that.
Oh, I'll jump in with this. I have a theater background. I started when I was 5, and so that's my whole life has been in the theater. And I had always wanted to be a voice actor, but I don't live in an area where there's a lot of that going on. And when I started getting into listening to audio drama, one day I just said to myself, what if I made one of these? And I gave myself 3 weeks to I did. Which I can't recommend. I don't recommend this, to be clear. But so I just jumped right in.
I love that. For my part, I for whatever reason, have always really resonated more with audible storytelling than I don't know, television. So for years, I almost exclusively took in audio drama and podcasting and writing and reading and stuff. That was just kind of what I enjoyed the most. And I also, that motivated me to get into radio, and I did college radio for 4 or 5 years. So for that time, I was taking stories that people gave me and dramatizing them and dramatizing stories that I wrote. And it was kind of the perfect stepping stone to get to audio drama, because I'd been doing it by myself, shouting into the void, having no idea if anyone was listening a lot of the time, which gave me the confidence to be I guess it doesn't really matter. I enjoy doing this, so I'm going to do this,
Roshan, what about you? I think Jade's having some connection issues.
No sweat.
Yeah.
I would say as a fan, it really came from Peter and the Wolf when I was 4 years old. I had that on tape, and I just re-listened to that over and over again before I knew what an audio drama was or could be. I think I stumbled from that into The Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy by the BBC on long car trips. And that kind of led to as a creator, I would say the moment I realized there was some resonance was when I listened to Hadestown and Hamilton for the first time. Then later, got the chance to see them, and I was oh, you know what? Actually, I kind of preferred the version that I'd built up in my head, listening to these wonderful stories. And the moment I realized that, oh yeah, audio is totally as compelling as the biggest Broadwayest thing out there. Yeah, I think I was just hooked on sort of giving someone else that feeling of awe. Yeah.
That's awesome.
For me, I also come from a theater background, so always something that was present in my life, and I started writing plays when I was in 6th grade. So there was that, and for why drama, little I used to listen to little. I still do it now, but I used to listen to radio saying or suspense things two things just met, and as a playwright, I write shows that I, yes, but also being able to produce them in the format that I can right now. I mean, it's just a beautiful of all that.
Yeah.
I love that. Just the connection between theater and radio and audio drama. Oh, that's so great. I want to know what your favorite part of the medium of audio drama is. Roshan, you touched a little bit on this in building your own picture, but from either listening or creating, what do you really love about audio fiction?
I'm gonna pause and let someone else slip in.
I'll jump on this one if nobody minds, because like again, this is like my favorite form of medium, and I just love how immersive it is. Like I feel like audio fiction and your imagination go hand in hand in the perfect way because it gives you just enough details to build a scene, but enough leeway and enough space that you can fill in all the rest of those details. And so whether it's like action or drama or romance, you can know how they're feeling and you can maybe hear some of their body language, but you're filling in their expressions and how close or how far away the characters are. And it's just so good that you have that like perfect balance between what you know and what you don't know, what you need and what you have. I just, it's perfect. I like listen to audio drama in the dark all the time, just lights off, head full of fiction. That's the way to end the night. What were you going to say?
Oh, just that I agree with that because the thing that I love is that you're only limited by really your imagination. Because you can, with a theater background, you have to rely so much on things like venue and people being in the same place at the same time. And with audio, you can say that you're set in outer space. And you can work with people all over the world, and you're not limited by that. And I love that. I think it opens up so many possibilities for, because it allows you to kind of naturally diversify the voices that you hear and the stories that you're told and what you want to present to the world. And I think that it naturally creates this really rich representative environment to play in.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I have a question to jump off of that. How accessible is audio fiction? How easy is it to in your stories?
I feel like that's the whole thing today, isn't it? Like we could spend an entire hour sort of looping back around that question, like the snake eating its own tail. I feel like to jump in, I would say like for the listener, you couldn't ask for a more accessible medium in many ways. And I'm going to ignore the asterisks that's popping up because I know that everyone's going to have stuff to say. But like as a listener, knowing that sort of it's probably on one of 20 different apps you could have in your phone if it's not on YouTube, knowing that most of it is available for free, knowing that sort of it's very generous as a medium in that way, as a listener. On the other hand, as a creator, I feel like there's some stuff that's like, a little bit harder. I think revenue is a concern. So like the idea of having the privilege to make an audio drama or having the privilege to set aside time and say, I don't need to worry about revenue right now. That's a huge thing. But I think those are the two big things that came to mind for me.
Yeah. I think it all depends on like access to resources. I think it all depends on like the resource. It's very accessible for listeners because you can find what you want, which is half the fun. But like making it, like I know how much it took to make Retribution and how much shows, and I know how much it's bringing in. And so like there is like this different, well like privilege because I was able to work a job in college. Spend it, and I have so like that is a very specific thing that isn't necessary for everyone. To like have longer episodes, like have more elaborate sound design, so that we can make shoestring budget. Let's cut in shoestring budget. It can be done with the least amount of money possible. It just depends like the willing. Even though you, of course, sometimes like the arrangements, like of course you can agree not to, but there's like a real range.
Yeah, I'm really curious for y'all and your different shows even. How much would you say in money and or time have you spent on your shows? Ballpark. I don't need exact numbers. Generally. Like if someone's looking into this and being like, how much time or money should I expect to put in to make an audio drama? Yeah, because there's a range, I feel like.
Oh,
I
yeah.
always say there's like an inversely proportionate relationship between both time and money in making audio drama, because the more time you put into it, the less money you necessarily have to put in it, because you put so much time and maybe your writing is better and you put in more resources or whatever that aren't money. But if you do put in more money, you don't have to put in as much time, because you can maybe buy better sound effects or hire someone to be your sound engineer or whatever. But like, not everyone can do that, as we've been saying. In fact, maybe most people can't do that. So if you're like portioning out, like for myself, for example, like I'm putting out Between Heartbeats now. I've been writing characters and like vignettes and everything in this universe for literal years. Like, this is the story I was telling 4 to 5 years ago when I was doing college radio, preparing for now. So just because I like, and sure, during that time, I was also putting aside money, like $5 here, $10 here. Eventually, this will be my Between Heartbeats fund. But that should barely be brought into the conversation almost, because it's like, it's pennies in the grand scheme of like how much it takes if you're really trying to put money into an audio drama. So like, not that everyone needs to put in years either, but like the more time you put into it and the more effort you put into the writing and whatever elements you're best at, the less you need, or the less you would benefit from just throwing money at it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I paid for Seen and Not Heard out of pocket, and it was not a very highly paid show, and because it was my first show, and it was like my first show with a cast, and it was I was fairly new. I did not have a big budget, and I was like, if I'm going to crowdfund for this, which was the original plan, then I didn't know how successful that would be. I didn't know realistically how much I could actually crowdfund, being that I was so new. And the show itself, for those who don't know, is about deafness. And to do a show about deafness in an audio medium was a risk. So I set the budget and I was like, okay, this is how much I can pay for everyone. And then we didn't end up crowdfunding because COVID. So I ended up paying out of pocket, and it was a couple $1,000s. And kind of slowly over a period of time. And I was just very transparent with the team and just was like, here's what I can pay and when. You will get paid. It's just going to take longer than originally planned. And right now I'm working on an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice that we just finished a crowdfunder for. That was a really successful crowdfunder. We raised over half of what the goal was, but it's still going to be like $4,000 out of my pocket all told. So it can cost a chunk, but it also depends on how big is your cast, how many episodes are you doing, how involved are things like sound design. Do you have actors who are going to double up on roles, things like that? Are you paying per line? Are you paying a flat fee per episode? There are a lot of different ways that you can do this, and there's really no one right way. You just have to look at what is best for you, and you have to look at what works for your team and what is that everyone agree to, and be upfront.
I think the last bit there is like so important, being upfront, because like a lot of this, I know there's been a lot of discourse like about this week especially, but a lot of us don't have the money to put into this, but we do have like that like effort and the emotion to put in. And if everybody who's part of it knows what the story is and knows what the stakes are and everything, then no one is losing anything by being part of the production. Everybody is gaining something, whether they just really want to be part of it, whether you're like very good friends and you want to become closer, whether they know, or whether you're telling them that you're available to share your skill in the same way for their production, like further down the line. Like, I feel like one of the major flaws of our society, or at least American society, is making everything about money. Like, we definitely can compensate each other and make each other feel valued without just like throwing dollar bills at each other's faces. Like, yes, I will 100% pay you so you know that I value you. Like, that is something I'm going to do. And in addition, here are some other things I can offer you if like it's more valuable than money to you, because it might be. Sorry, mini rant over.
No, working for trade makes sense. We do that a lot in this community. Barter system, baby.
So to throw another funding model in the mix, Temujin, an audio drama, was something we made through crowdfunding. And like, absolute props to Caro for like rapping on Queer Pride and Prejudice fundraising. That seemed like a whole thing. And I think it is impossible to overestimate just how all-pervasive, soul-consuming an effort crowdfunding can be. we were really, really lucky for Timogen that like for our very first audio drama, we were able to raise about 7K USD. And I think that allowed us to pay everybody exactly the rates that we were hoping to, in terms of sort of what we had deemed to be professional rates. Though, of course, to return to an earlier point that was made, I can't remember by who, there is not such a thing as like set audio drama rates. Like you need this much for acting. Like for instance, in our case, because we were relying so heavily on theatrical rehearsing, we had huge, like 3 months worth of rehearsals. Paying people per line in that case would make no sense whatsoever. So we pay people by hour instead to make sure that like effort was being rewarded. And like we further differentiated people who were students and sort of living nearby and people who were full-time. So everybody who was working full-time jobs elsewhere and cabbing over, we made sure those people sort of got a proportional bonus. So like, I think this has been touched on a few times, but the idea of sort of like compensating by comfort and compensating relative to everybody's own needs, as opposed to looking for a blanket, this is an okay rate thing is huge. Because crowdfunding is hard, if there's a part later on where like, or if there's people watching this who want to crowdfund an audio drama, happy to kind of just throw stuff in there. And I also know that Tal has written a wonderful article on crowdfunding within audio drama that I have not stopped recommending to people. But yeah.
That is fantastic.
Could,
I'm trying to find the link to that article.
These captions. I'm sorry, the captions say Jersey Mike, and that's just very funny.
Jersey Mike.
Like, why? Who's hungry? Oh my gosh.
There's the article. You found it first, Tal.
Is there a Jade? I feel like every time I stick my head in to be like, Jade, do you have something to say? I overlap you saying something.
no, I'm
Watch
just
a
the way,
second.
so
I know
it's no one's. Okay, it's time now. I was gonna say that my shows typically hover around like $3,000 so far, but with Sean brought up, I pay people like per page speak on, which I think is low, and I'd like to escalate in the future, but that's what I got right now. I think paying by hour for future stuff could be really great. I thought about that, but yeah, most of the stuff, I don't pay myself, and young talent like me, so they have like different rates than like people who are years in the game, and they're like, I got 2 kids and a mortgage, you know, and so like that's a whole different game. And that I do work with that like are older, like they are taking a me, and like they're choosing to take a like I believe in the project. Like $2,000 is the area though.
I think a really big thing that's really important if you are like starting a project, or if you are entering a project as an actor or a sound designer or whatever, is just to think about like, does this project fulfill me in ways other than compensation, like monetary compensation? Like if I work on a show and I'm not getting paid, or I'm getting paid very little, is it creatively fulfilling? Is it exciting? Do I like the people I'm working with? And if you don't answer yes to those things, then that may not be the project you want to put your name on, and it may not be what you want to devote your time to, and that's okay. But that's why I also think it's really important when you're creating a show to do everything you can to foster that kind of environment. From the get-go, you want to have a place that is warm and welcoming and safe and comfortable for everyone, as much as is within your power to create. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, but I think communication is the biggest thing. Because if I work on an audio drama and I get paid, you know, bupkis, I don't care as long as I had a great time doing it. I could work on a show and get paid a lot of money, but if it was draining and exhausting and not fun, then I'm not going to look back on that fondly, and I'm not going to want to work with those people again. So the actual process of creating it in a way that is positive and fulfilling is just as important as things like budget and technical aspects of it.
Heck yeah. If I could jump in really quickly, because that is a wonderful point. And on the note of communication, if there was one thing that I could advise, it would be talk about expectations rather than titles. Because I feel like a lot of people get really hung up on, I need a producer or I need like a stage manager for my thing. And I think what happens is sometimes those people get brought on and they're like, I'll pay you $500 to stage manage. And they're like, sweet. And then all of a sudden they're getting told things like, hey, where are these 10 reports that stage managers usually write? And they're like, what are you doing? What are you saying? And they're like, it was due yesterday. And you're like, so I think like the whole thing is, one thing that every audio drama needs is like a sit down. It could be like a call or an in-person conversation. I'm based in Singapore right now, so most of the stuff that I do is calls. But like just sit down and kind of just have like a write down like sort of everything that you expect that person will do, down to like in a week, like what are their responsibilities like? What will they need to think about? How proactive will they have to be? Right? Because like proactivity versus following sort of just a set list of messages is two totally different things. So once that is all clear, and then you peg a rate to clear expectations, it's really hard to go wrong. So yeah, that would be my response to like Carol's wonderful point about communication.
That is great.
Yes.
Indeed.
Where? I'm doing it again. Go.
We're doing great.
We want to hear you, Jade.
I wasn't saying anything. Tell.
Okay, all right. I was gonna kind of divert us slightly. I love what you all are saying about communication, and here's my segue on the topic of communication. Where should someone start if they wanted to make audio fiction? Let's say someone has this great idea for an audio drama, and they've never made audio fiction before. Where should they start? What would you say to that person? What would you communicate to them?
Write it first.
They need to go.
Yeah. I think I would just say, like, as much as is within reason, get your ducks in a row as far as what you'll need to organize. Figure out, roughly how many cast members are you going to need? Who do you need on your team? What can you do realistically? Like I often do dialogue placement, but not necessarily sound design. Or I might be acting on a show and I'm not writing it, or I'm writing it but I'm not acting on it. It just sort of depends on that. Once you have an idea of the scale of your project, that will help you enormously. Because I think something that happens a lot is people go, oh, I have this great idea and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then it snowballs because they didn't anticipate, oh, I need this many actors. That's a lot of people. Oh, I don't know how to do this part of the technical stuff. I need to bring someone in. And as much as you can just be good to future you, do future you some favors and just get as organized as you possibly can, and offer yourself a buffer everywhere you possibly can for time and budget. Give yourself soft deadlines always.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, like, piggybacking off of that, like, definitely write it first. At the very least, have a skeleton, because I know some shows have like an overall arcing idea of where the plot will go, but it's not entirely written. And some shows are completely written, and then like maybe they'll erase it and redo stuff as they go on. But what the best shows, or the shows I think that last the longest, have in common is that they have some kind of plan and some kind of like terrace that they can stick to. I would also say to start with your strengths. I feel like audio drama has a few different like facets that are like can make a really strong story, whether it's fantastic writing and solid characters, or like really immersive sound design, or maybe even just like having people whose voices sound really nice. But if you can like lean on one of those more, like have fantastic writing, then maybe you can afford to have like simpler sound design, because you don't have to go over the moon if your characters are just like pulling people in. And there's also shows that have like really immersive sound design. I can think of a lot of stuff the Whisperforge has, for example, where it's like the story is good, but it's a lot more sparse on the words, because you get the concept, you can hear where they are, and you can kind of just sit down and let the show like relax you, because that's what it's for. So it depends on where your strengths lie, and also what the whole point of your show is. If it's just there to make people feel good and be calm and just like let them hear pleasant things with a little bit of narration, you can pull that off. And as long as you know that that's what you're going for, you can do so effectively.
Yes. I have 3 points to raise, and
Off
so
of
help me, please. Go for it. You first, Jade.
to kind of hop off of what she just said, I think really helpful too, because focus, it really helps with creating a show, especially so like having a focus aesthetics, like what that will be and like what the characters are. Make sure that you make it really, really clear to you and really lay out what the show will be about and how it will flow. I think getting that down infinitely, especially when you start introducing it to other people, to help you explain it better.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 3 points to raise. So help me. I'll try to remember them all. The first is like, given that this is generally aimed to like people thinking about their first audio drama, and I don't know if there are any of you like actually listening to this right now, and if you are like, and you signpost in the comments, heck yeah. But like for you guys, I want to offer first off nothing but unadulterated like encouragement in terms of like, it is entirely possible to create just like a butt-kicking audio drama off your first go. I think with the Temujin team, that was our first ever audio drama. And I think I couldn't have imagined, I think how kindly that would be received. But like, I think the whole point is, well, this whole session is talking about the how of it, but I think it's important to know that you shouldn't treat yourself like a first timer per se, just in terms of like, go for it. Don't treat your first project as like a small thing that you have to do as an obligatory thing to get to your bigger thing. Do the show you really want to make, because that's the one you probably feel the best working long hours on. The second point I wanted to make was responding to, I think, everybody's point about writing your own show, right? And playing to your strengths. One of the really cool things about audio drama is that like, I think it is both, but not quite either stage, filmic, and prose-like. You get a lot of shows that kind of hit kind of all three and ping them. Like when I think of Dose After You, I think of sort of very often novelistic prose, beautiful prose, flowing and effusive, and you get this sound design that sort of lifts it up and elevates it, right? And when I think of something like a Chain of Being, for instance, what you get there is really cinematic, really fast-paced, really sort of, you get the sense that you are watching a movie or watching a serialized sci-fi show. And you have shows like, I guess like Temujin, which was originally written as a stage play, and kind of has that sort of lived-in kind of scenic feel. And I think what I'm trying to say in listing all these examples is like, you can think of your show when you're sitting down to write it as virtually any of those three, in terms of a listening experience. And you can think about what you have written before or enjoy writing and think, I'm going to channel my love of that into making like a butt-kicking audio drama. And you will be fine. Like that's a really cool part about it. And I told myself I wouldn't forget the third, and I forgot the third, but I think those two are long.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
I was going to say one more thing that I think is a piece of advice that was given to me when I started playwriting years ago, was to figure out the style that you want to tell the story in. Because I do a lot of stylized writing. I love like banter, and I write a lot of comedy, but my strength lies in slice of life. That is the thing that I am best at. That's the thing that I am most comfortable in writing. And that's why Seen and Not Heard is very pure slice of life. Like there's nothing else going on. It is absolutely just dropped from actual life. And I think when you know exactly what style you're going for, that will also help you figure out the overall structure of your story. And that will be greatly helpful when it comes to organizing and planning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll very quickly jump.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You first.
No, you can go, because I know you forgot your third one, and I hope this is it.
It isn't, so like, but I was just gonna excitedly respond to Caro, the note on dramatic structure, because like we've talked about that, like it really, really helps to sort of know that you can fall back on sort of pacing tips, and not just sort of have to wing it, because there's nothing worse than like keeping the story going and trying to keep it going and feeling like you're pulling your hair out. Yeah.
That's actually super similar to what I was going to say. Which
No!
Is just, oh, that's great.
I'm sorry.
You can like piggyback again. But like knowing and understanding dramatic structure is so helpful, and also knowing like the tenets of the genre that you're writing in, because you don't have to necessarily go along with everything the genre normally does. It's usual conventions. But knowing what they are can help to like give you ideas, to let you know what you want to do, what you don't want to do. I mentioned before that like my main like form of media is audio drama, and like the exception to that for a couple of years was like books about story structure, like the hero's journey, like 3-act structures, Save the Cat, like all of that stuff gives you a decent idea of like the major beats that make a story relatable, the beats that the person like learns to expect, and then you can learn to either subvert those or go along with them. There's just a lot you could do. And also to anyone listening, I would really suggest the book Save the Cat Writes a Novel, or Save the Cat Takes the Stage, something like that. The whole Save the Cat series, just because we all know what makes a good story, like subconsciously, without ever having to study it or like take classes on it or whatever. But the more you read about it and the more you like take it in and realize, oh, that's why, I don't know, I was gonna use Harry Potter as an example, but I don't do that anymore. But like all of the like very popular stories usually have like these main things that work. So yeah, look up 3-act structure, look up the hero's journey. As long as you know what makes your genre work, you can, play around with that.
I'm scared of interrupting people now. I love that so much. Something we've touched on a lot is the lack of visuals and how that really helps with immersive storytelling, and also theoretically helps with one's budget. But I'm really curious, how do you create a story that's inclusive and diverse without visual aids? I would love to know.
You take this one first.
Now that's a great question.
Jade, would you like to start? No.
Oh,
okay. Sorry.
So that's a really good question, and it's something I've been thinking. What?
There's a delay.
Continue.
That's a great question, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And it takes place in 18 Mexico, unincorporated New Mexico. The main character is an Irish Catholic woman. Absolutely right. And yet almost every single person in the show is. I think that it goes down. It just really comes down. Well, in that case, when it came down to the casting, about her whiteness wasn't relevant to the plot, really. And the actors I know, due to the fact that I went to in college, like most of the actors that I know are Black. It happened that way. Other stuff, particularly body types, I'm not sure. And it's actually very clunky, and I better ways, some pointers in this discussion.
I mean, there are definitely ways to, I don't personally tend to when I write, and I'm actually trying to get better about this because I do think it is important, like we say, when you can't see someone, to be representative of like who they are and what they look like, as if you can. I tend to, as a writer, I sometimes just default to kind of not describing people in great detail. And that's kind of always been part of my writing. I like to sort of give vague, like I think the only physical detail we get about anybody in Seen and Not Heard is like one note that David is cute, and that can mean so many things. I was like, he has to be adorable. That's the law. But that's kind of all I got. But when it came to, like, for instance, it was really important to me that my protagonist, who I also play, is Jewish. And that's easy to do in that I set the show around the high holidays, and she has a conversation with her rabbi at one point, and I was like, I could do things like that just sort of work their way into the story. But when it comes to visuals, like, I know exactly what Bette looks like in my mind, but then I've had people say, oh, in my head, she looks like this. And I was like, wow, that is wildly different from what I had. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different. But I think if it is a situation where someone's appearance does matter, it's important to look at the script and be like, how can I work this in a way that isn't like, hello, I see that you have blonde hair, or like whatever, like these really clunky ways of describing someone, and finding ways to, I think a really good example actually is the show Null and Void by Cole Burkhart. He did a really, really, really great job of making it very clear that the main character is Black, and he found really great ways to make it naturally work its way into the story. And because he was like, so help me, I am not letting people do fan art of this character as a white woman. And he nailed it, and he did it in such a good way. And it was just a great, I think that's like the best example I can come up with off the top of my head.
Absolutely.
So,
nope. You just
again. So part of my excitement, my visible excitement for the question, was the fact that like I am calling in from Singapore, tonight, like for this. Well, tonight it's like 2:33 a.m. for me at this point. It's great. I'm awake. But the fact of the matter that like I literally have a voice right now in this setting, is something that like I owe to audio fiction, right? Because like, to a certain extent, audio fiction has been like, oh, Lauren, hang in there. We're in this together. I've got like a bunch of caffeine in here. But yeah, audio fiction is to some extent geography blind, right? Like it allowed us to put out a show where like, I've got to rattle off this list, proud of it. Our team had Mongolians, Indians, Indonesians, people from the Philippines, one Canadian, and I think that one Canadian was the only person from the like Anglosphere. We had like I think we had like 6 to 7 countries represented in the team, and 3 or 4 continents, and that happened incidentally. You know, like in the reviews, like people talk about the story, right? They actually talk about the drama of it. They talk about how they felt listening. You know, we get to like casually just slide in sort of this Singapore-based, like Central Asian story developed by an international cast, helmed by like a whole bunch of people, and like that just happened, you know. And like, in what other medium would be so sort of flippantly casual about anything like that? You know, like that's so as like from that perspective, you know, like diversity in audio fiction is something that I think we've barely scraped the surface of, something we could nuance to depth when it comes to accents and the performance of accents, but we don't have the time for too much of that, so I'm gonna hand off. Yeah.
No, it's so true. That is something that's so great about this medium, is that, like we said, you're not bound by geography. You're not bound by time zones necessarily. You can absolutely work with people from all over the world, and it's so exciting.
I agree. And as far as like making like a inclusive and diverse story without visuals, I think that's kind of where having really solid characters come in and really good writing, because, and also like the intent that you have when you're casting. For example, taking Between Heartbeats, my show, we just finished casting for, we ended up with like more than 300 auditions, which was fantastic and is crushing in terms of like what we now have to sort through, but it's so good and I'm so excited about it. But what we did was cast specifically for trans and gender nonconforming people, and specifically for people of color, with priority to both of those groups. So we wanted to make sure that we had as many people of color in the show as possible, and as much, we had like specific characters who were only going to be people of color and specific characters who were going to be trans or gender nonconforming. But we also left enough space in the script so that we didn't make it too tight about their culture or anything. So for example, we have a part where it says, so-and-so recounts childhood here, cultural name for grandma, lists favorite childhood dish. And we let the actual actor like give that information, and like doesn't actually have to say their grandmother's name, but what they would have said, so that it's realistic and so that they're supporting as much of a real character from their background as possible. Because it's not about what their race is, it's about the fact that there are accurate representations of it, and that they get to like truly act and be a character that is not themselves while bringing a real background to it. And also just like, you can have a Black character without them like, A, announcing it all the time, B, speaking exclusively in AAVE like Ebonics, or C, describing the color of their skin at every possible opportunity. Like, you can tell that someone is Black without like them saying yo all the time. And when I see that in writing, it's a little frustrating.
Oh my
but like you were saying, in Null and Void, like it was so good. Like the details that Cole used to make it clear. And even just the fact that like one of the characters smells like cocoa butter. You know, it's a small detail, but for people who know, you know. And a lot of the time, like having that representation in fiction, like having something that shouts out to you specifically that you get because someone else like you is in it, it can mean the world. And it's part of why I think so many of us love audio fiction. We can see or hear ourselves in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That's so good.
Perfect.
All right, we've got 7 minutes left, and I'm changing the topic. Great question in Q&A.
Ooh.
How do you find collaborators and actors?
Oh man, Twitter. Yeah.
No, but really, I mean, yeah, I threw up a casting call on Twitter and for Seen and Not Heard for like six or seven roles, and I got 120 odd auditions for that, mostly just through Twitter. And people from, again, like all over the world and all different walks of life, and it was
in terms of just like the social side of podcasting and audio drama, like Twitter made a huge difference in me being able to hear about audio drama and auditions and like just different opportunities that I might not have become aware of before. Not just like in terms of the business, because like you can go on Casting Call Club and there's hundreds of things there. But on Twitter, like I can follow someone who I know is like gender nonconforming and likes the same kind of fiction I do. So when they put out a show, it's like, all right, I'm probably going to enjoy what you make. And I can do that with like 20 different people and then vice versa with me.
Sorry. So quickly, like I agree. Like Twitter is like a genuine sort of haven for anybody who's into audio fiction in the scene, and how approachable it is. So for me, Temujin was like a 4-year process. I discovered Twitter in year 4. So for like the first 3 years of that, I think it was this interesting process of finding other ways of going about it. And the one thing I learned from that was that you would be surprised how far you can get, I think, looking at the people in your life and the friends that you already have, and having conversations with them about like, they don't have to, how do I put this? You don't have to look for experts in your field. So tying back to that conversation from earlier about like, what are the expectations for the role, right? Like what exactly are you looking for when you say, I need a producer? If you have a really close friend who's really psyched about like stuff like this, and has time after their day job, and you trust them as a person, like in their core, it can be good to talk to them and have these real life conversations about like, if we did this together, would you be? Because like a lot of the initial core team for Temujin was really close friends having conversations about what we can realistically offer each other. And I don't recommend that in all cases because like shows benefit from diversity. And it's good to break out of your friend group, but at the same time, right? Like, don't discount the people who you're close to just because they don't have professional experience. If they're keen and that's my whole point.
yeah, absolutely.
I'll follow up very quickly, but that doesn't mean don't pay them. And you have the whole thing about expectations just as important. So like work with them like you would work with a Twitter person, but like yeah. Point made. Just gotta throw that out there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Does anyone have suggestions beyond Twitter, or are we all just post about your show on Twitter?
I mean that really is where the bulk of a lot of the conversations have started for me. Oh, Backstage, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Casting
a
Call
good.
Club
That's a
is
good
yeah. I think it really does just come down to like how specifically you want to find the stuff you're looking for, because there are multiple places you can find work or find projects, but narrowing it down I think is what takes the most time. So if you have a way of doing that, whether it's people you already know or like social networks that encompass that, I think those are good places to start. And also, if you've got the free time, then, dive in. Like, it's okay to just inundate yourself with all this information. This also goes for like training yourself on sound design, on like getting a mic, on like all of this stuff. Because the more you absorb and know, the more you can like just passively have your knowledge level about all this stuff rise. And one of the things that I enjoy the most when I'm working with collaborators is having like a finger in each different like pot of the skill sets we're using. Like all of us wear all of the hats. Like all of us have at least a little bit of sound design and writing and story plotting and like administrative experience doing this kind of thing, because you have to if you've got a show with sounds, writing, and people in it. But what is helpful is knowing that like, oh, tell me I didn't just forget what I was talking about. Oh, right, wearing all the hats. It's helpful to know like, when I'm working with a sound designer who is much better than me or who has more experience than me, it makes me feel better and more confident in my show when I at least know what they're talking about. When I've been working on it, I know how to cut, I know what DAW they're using or whatever. And the same goes for if you're hiring writers or whatever. You just want to be able to like speak on the same level as everyone you're working with, because that overall raises the quality of your show.
It helps with specificity and it helps with direction if you have at least like a cursory knowledge of each aspect of the, you don't have to know how to, like, I don't know how to do what Tal does for sound design, but I can communicate to Tal what I'm looking for in sound design. And that's really useful. Yeah.
Yeah. The quickest way to improve leaps and bounds in audio drama is to find someone smarter than you in the thing you need help with and ask them for help.
Yes.
So much of it is just asking someone smarter than you how a thing is done.
Read those smart threads people keep making on Twitter too. Read them.
Honestly, yeah. Oh, NPR training is a great resource for online. NPR training has basically so much background info you could use on audio, editing, all of that stuff. Like it's dense, but it's helpful.
Excellent. Well, we have a minute and a half left, and I would love for all y'all to plug yourselves. Where can we find you on the interwebs? Where can we ask you a bunch of questions? So do please tell us where we can keep up with you.
I'm at Between Pod on Twitter. That's the word between and pod, at Between Heartbeats. And I am at Inner Chi, spelled inner_QI on Twitter. And I'll put this here.
I am on Twitter at Saucy Minx. It's a pun I'm very proud of. My DMs are pretty much always open if anyone ever has questions, and I also have a website. And oh, look at Tal just jumping in there, fixing all this for. Thank you, Tal. Yeah, come say hi. Come say hi.
I was gonna try and type up something, but Tal is just on it. I'm Roshan Singh. He his. Well, I mean, what's the point? Yeah, you can find me.
That's the point.
Yeah. Well, here's something I can add is you can also find our production company, Andas Media, on Twitter. I'll throw that in there. And yeah. And I guess listen to Temujin. That's the one show that we put out so far, but we're working on the next couple. That'll be, yeah.
And what about you, Jade?
Well, thanks. You can find me on Twitter at you can find she's done. On everything else like at with Good Co as well. That whole little box thing.
I prepared these in advance. Okay,
Thanks,
that's our time. I'm Tal. I didn't introduce myself at the start. They, them, side questing, other things. Links are there. Help me fund my new show, please. Yeah. Great. I don't know what to do from here. I'm just stalling for the staff. I see a quit event button. Maybe I'll press that, see what happens.
It was fantastic talking to all of you. This has been really good.
Thank you all. This was
Yeah,
lovely.
It's wonderful.
Thank you all
This
for
was worth
joining
it.
us.
This is great.
Don't want to actually hit the quit button. What you're going to want to do to get out of this and back into the exhibiting space is you're just going to hit your back button on your browser. So that's
thank you.
the exhibitors.
Okay, cool.
For everybody here, just remember that in the exhibitor space, we've got 4 full floors of exhibitors. And you can visit all of them. There are also lounge spaces. So if you want to chat about any of the things that you've been talking about, or any of the things you've heard of, You can pick a lounge space and chat with folks. They're small. I think they have about 5 or 6 people can be in a chat at once, but you can chat with video or sound or anything that makes you comfortable.
Great.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Yeah,
Cool.
thank you all. This is great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
y'all.
everybody.
Peace and love.
Bye.
Bye. Time to sleep.
Bye.